Hi everybody, welcome to Salmon Jam. And one of the most fun parts about Salmon Jam is small fry, our kids' activities on Saturday. And the Science Center runs our fish printing booth every year, but since we won't be doing fish printing with you, we figured we could do a neat little how-to on fish printing, or what we've done, low tide printing. So the first thing you might want to know is what you will need: newspapers, acrylic paint, so this is permanent, be careful. And we find that ice cube trays work really well for keeping your paint separate if you're doing different colors. These foam brushes seem to work the best, but any paintbrush will do. Your low tide animals, and something to fish print on. In this case, I'll be using a pillowcase. All right, now the first thing to talk about, normally at Small Fry, we have a bunch of different fish that have been collected for us for that purpose with a permit. And while you're not probably gonna go out and get a permit yourself, but you can go low tiding. And so these animals, or parts of animals that I have here, were all collected locally, and they were not living when I collected them. And that's really important. Make sure whatever you bring back from the beach is not living or has no animals hiding inside of it. So I have some shells here, and you want to pick out stuff with really interesting texture. That's what's going to show up on your print the best. So I have some shells, a crab carapace with no crab in it, and there wasn't one when I found it, an urchin test, again, no urchin living inside of it, a rock with some dead barnacles on it, and a little bit of seaweed. And we're just gonna see how this turns out. So what you wanna do when you're fish printing is maybe just do a few of these at a time. So I'm gonna pick my rock with barnacles on it, my shell, and how about my seaweed here? We'll see how these go. And you take your foam brush and pick your color. How about some green barnacle rock? And the trick here is you don't want too much paint that you're gonna lose the texture, but you wanna cover every part of whatever you're printing. And you have to work kind of quickly so that your paint doesn't dry in the time that you're doing everything. So that's another reason to pick just a few and work on them. So that might look pretty cool. How about a purple rockweed seaweed or popweed? That's another good texture. And we'll go a blue shell. I think the shell is going to turn out really nicely. So again, cover your shell. And don't worry about getting paint on the newspaper beneath it. Just make sure it's nice and covered. Again, working quickly to make sure my green paint on my barnacle rock doesn't dry out by the time I'm finished. Okay, if you're working from home, you might want to wash or wipe your hand off with some paper towel. I will just use my newspaper over here. And then one of the important parts about getting a nice clean print on whatever you're printing is to move your items or replace the newspaper underneath, because I have all this blue paint around my shell that I don't want to pick up on my print. And so since my items are kind of small, you can just move them to another section of your newspaper, or you can pick them up and totally remove, or I'll just fold down this section of newspaper so I don't get that paint on what I'm printing. And then you might have a piece of fabric, or a t-shirt works really well, and putting some other fabric in between is a good idea. So this paint will bleed through thin fabric like this. But so I'm just gonna put my hands out, and rather than putting the items on the fabric, you can just lay your fabric. I'm gonna go in a corner. You can just lay your fabric over top your items. And then take your fingers and just kind of do a patting motion. You don't want to wipe it because you can lose the texture. But then you just want to pat every single piece. I can't really see where my shell is. I hope I'm getting it. Make sure you get every edge, every part of that shell. My barnacle rock over here. I have no idea what that'll look like when I'm finished. We'll see how it turns out. Okay. And then if you're working with small kids, usually it's nice to have them hold 2 corners and you can hold 2 corners, and then you just want to lift it straight up off of your items. And there you have part of your pillowcase or your t-shirt printed. So my shell looks kind of like a butterfly. My barnacle rock has some neat texture, but I do like that popweed a lot. That's really cool. I would kind of do more of those all over the pillowcase if I could. And that is it. This is acrylic, it's permanent. So you might want to wear a smock or an apron or a lab coat if you have one at home, and let these dry completely for about 24 hours, and then you have your permanent fish print. All right, thanks guys, happy Salmon Jam.